Yuba-Sutter.live's local government live streams are presented by Plumas Lake Self-Storage in Plumas Lake, where lifelong local residents are helping other residents keep things safe, providing indoor storage units, outdoor RV and vehicle parking, moving supplies, and Penske truck rentals. Details at plumaslakeselfstorage.com.
Moment. This proclamation is on the Accessory Society on Bond Day. Is there someone here to receive this? Here's the deal. I'm going to read this tonight, but I've been invited to a party on Friday night. Yeah. And I'd like to formally present it then and read it again, but I'd like to read it to you now if I could. Oh, here, if you'd stand here and I can read. Proclamation to the Hop Sing Society commemorating the 142nd Bok Kai Festival. Whereas the Bok Kai Festival is a continuing community tradition originating in the year 1880. Whereas the year 2022, the year of the tiger, marks the 142nd year of the Bok Kai Festival, and whereas the two-day Bok Kai Festival, beginning with the parade and ending with the Bond Day ceremony, is of historic and cultural importance to the citizens of Yuba and Sutter counties, including the cities of Marysville and Yuba City. It is of particular significance to the Chinese community within the Yuba-Sutter area. And whereas the Hop Sing Society continues to contribute to the Yuba-Sutter community and the Bok Kai Festival, now, therefore, be it proclaimed that the City Council of the City of Marysville, the City Council of the City of Yuba City, the Board of Supervisors of the County of Yuba, and the Board of Supervisors of the County of Sutter, California, jointly issue the proclamation to the Hop Sing Society celebrating the 142nd year of Bok Kai Festival and conveying best wishes for success in all of its endeavors during the year of the tiger, and signed by the mayors of each city and the chairman of each board of supervisors. I'll give you a peek at it. It's really a pretty one. I like the presentation, don't you? Well, that's what it says. But anyway, I'll be at the party. This is my ticket. Thank you. Thank you so much. It's so nice to meet you, Candace. Oh.
With the proclamation.
Yeah, we'll hide this one.
There we go.
So nice to meet you, Candace. It's okay, just a couple of quick Bond Day and Bok Kai remembrances. I remember the first time I went down there was probably about 1959 when I was 10 years old. You know, when you're able to wander that far from home, it has always been fun. I mean, you see the dragon, and then of course with little kids, you love the firecrackers. And without knowing much about the culture, of course, we appreciate the culture so much more now as we become older. Ah, what a grand tradition. Okay, let's see. We are now and the Community and Consent Calendar Forum. I have a paragraph I need to read. Individuals wishing to address the City Council concerning consent calendar items or on matters not already on the agenda are invited to make oral comments of up to 3 minutes. If you would like to comment and you are attending the meeting in person, please complete a speaker's card and return that to the city clerk. When called upon, go to the podium, address the council. If you're participating via Zoom and would like to speak, please raise your hand via Zoom. When you're called upon by the city clerk, you will be unmuted and you can address the council. Whether you are here in person or attending via Zoom, when called upon, please give your name, state your name clearly. For audio recording, you're required to address your comments to the council and not to the audience. By state law, the council is not permitted to undertake any action or discussion on any item not appearing on the posted agenda. If you have any documentation that you would like to be distributed to council, please mail it to City Clerk, 526 C Street, Marysville, 95901. Okay, we now move. Is there any public comment on matters not on the agenda?
Not at this time, Mayor.
Thank you. Okay, the consent calendar. We now move to the consent calendar on which there are there's one item. I was looking for more. It's the approval of accounts payable. What is the will of the council?
So moved.
Motion.
Second.
Motion second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. That was unanimous, Madam Clerk. Okay, now we move to the discussion action calendar. And everything I read about the Community and Consent Forum about in-person or Zoom, and you want to speak, you can do it via Zoom. You can give a speaker's card to the city clerk and you'll be allowed to speak up to 3 minutes. The first item on the discussion and action calendar is item number 2, Sapphire Group LLC contract for 2022 and 23 recommendation. Pass a motion authorizing the city manager, 1, to enter into a contract agreement between the city of Marysville and Sapphire Group LLC to produce the 22 and 23 Peach Festival and Christmas Parade in an amount not to exceed $64,150 per year, and 2, authorize the finance director to make a supplemental appropriation of $35,000 to the appropriate account. Our contact on this is Mr. Dan Flores, Community Development Director. Dan, please share with us.
You bet. Honorable Mayor and City Council, I'm pleased to present a proposal to you tonight that you just read, Mr. Mayor, on the recommendation. Just a little bit of background on the recommendation. The Peach Festival and the Christmas Parade are city events that are produced every year for the past 22 years and 71 years, respectively. So 22 years on the Peach Festival and 71 years, as we heard, on the Bok Kai Parade. So until July of 2018, the city employed a full-time events coordinator who produced the Peach Festival, and Christmas Parade for the prior 10 years to 2018. And then upon the coordinator's departure from the city, it was determined to be more time and cost effective to employ a contractor to produce the events, especially since the city does not have special events department or the capacity to produce these events with existing staff. Therefore, the city staff makes a recommendation that contracting with Sapphire Marketing Group to produce the Peach Festival and Christmas Parade, and to utilize the same group to do a single contract for the year 2022 and 2023. And Mr. Mayor, we have representatives from Sapphire Marketing Group if you'd like to ask any questions or if there's any further details that you'd like. Okay. Come on up, Sapphire. Well, well, they wanted to answer questions, but I'm happy to. I mean, the 35 additional. Oh, okay. We can do it for both, but $35,000 additional dollars to handle the Peach Festival as well. So you have two festivals that are included in this contract. Yes. Yeah.
Thank you.
Did you want to?
I think it's been answered. You know, when the customer says yes, just smile and say thank you. I think we've got other questions.
Through the chair. So Dan, or anybody,
Sure.
I know that I've broached with the city manager and we've had a recent conversation like 2 days after a surgery. Kind of remember the conversation, right? So, but we were talking about also asking Sapphire to help us out with the 4th of July event and so forth. And because that was something the counterpart and myself started 4 years ago again, very stoked to have it. Did it for 2 years. Miss Nicole Moe did it last year. Thank you very much. And I don't want to do it again because I may not be here again. So trying to figure out how we're going to make that happen. This is a separate contract then, if we were to talk about that?
So right now we are preparing another contract for the 4th of July festival as well.
Okay.
So we should be able to bring that to the next meeting.
Well, okay, great. Thank you. Then that answers my question. And I'm for the work that has been done by Sapphire for the Christmas parade and so forth. It's cool. I'm looking forward to it again with the Peach. It was a good one.
Terrific.
Yeah.
I'm kind of thinking this is a finance thing. Maybe Jim can even answer it. I'm more than glad to hear your answer, but I think it's a matter of shuffling the money around for us.
Right. She'll be able to answer. The budget's included in your packet.
Right.
Explains the amounts pretty thoroughly. But if
So-
you can explain.
My explanation would be this, that it's $65,000 to produce the 2 events. However, last year we worked really hard on sponsorships, and we assured you that we would raise $16,500. We raised $44,000 for Peach Festival. And there's a split there that comes into, we give you 50% of that and we get a 50% commission on it.
Right.
And so there's that. And then there are sometimes unforeseen expenses where we need an additional allocation, whether something that I can just tell you right now, like we go to get the umbrellas from the corp yard and mice have gotten into the umbrellas and torn them up and we need to purchase new umbrellas. And that wasn't something that was a budgeted item. So it's for those types of expenses.
Okay. But it doesn't, the way I'm reading this, it doesn't affect the contract, the total contract amount.
No. The
Okay.
contract amount is at 65,000, the 60.
Right. So this is kind of an
4,000.
internal approving that money if it's needed. Correct?
Correct. Yes.
Okay.
That's right. Yeah. Thanks for clarifying.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's good.
Anybody else?
Any further
Quick
questions?
question. So this is, you raised 44. Was that for one of the events or for both?
Just one. Christmas parade, I believe we came in, what was it, 24,500, something like that. And we assured you that we would raise, what was it? 5,600. I think it was something like that. Yeah. So this year, what we did, because we were so successful with sponsorships last year, we bumped up our minimum sponsorship commitment to you. However, we thought we'd have a little bit more time to raise the money, not 4.5 months. So we're hopeful, and we're optimistic, but we're not sure we'll hit that minimum.
I favor the relationship. You have a 50% of each dollar incentive to raise the money, and the rest of it goes to defer our costs. And those are great events. And they were really well received and well executed.
Yes. Well, each year we seem to grow those relationships with your sponsorship supporters and then hope and attract new sponsor support. So each year we've been a little bit more successful. So we hope to continue to grow that.
Thank you.
And I might add that the second year is really important to give us the time to ramp up. So we have this year with 4.5 months, but the next year we'll have a full year period. So this is a really good opportunity for the city to be able to maximize the dollars.
Continuity makes sense. Barring any further questions? Motion?
I'd make a motion to approve.
Second.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
You got it unanimous.
Thank you.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
Okay, Measure C Renewal. I requested this be put on the agenda. Let's let everybody exit here. It was nice of them to be here. So I'll own this and just discuss it very quickly and then, or present it very quickly and then allow conversation and comment as people, as members of the council and the public want to weigh in on it. The Measure C, which provided 3.4 out of the 12.8 million in revenue in our last fiscal year, sunsets in 2026. That's only 4 years hence as you think about it. And if we were to be at risk of losing that, I'd rather know that sooner than later. And so the suggestion I put here, and I think there's some support for this, is to put it on the 2022 ballot, an extension. I asked a public-spirited and independent-minded person today, I won't mention his name, but his initials are David Lanza. Should it be evergreen or should it be a period of years? And he said a period of years. Anytime you say permanent, you'll scare people away. And I think it makes a lot of sense to look at a period of years. What came to mind immediately was to have it be 10 years from this election. So it would be into 2032. So it would have never been longer than 10 years in its lifetime. So there's the, there it is. I won't take it any further. It's that simple. And I welcome, I think public comment should come first. Do we have any public comment on this matter, Madam Clerk?
Not at this time, Mayor.
Thank you, ma'am. Do we have comments or questions from the council?
Through the chair.
Sir.
So, personally, I'm not a fan of the idea of extending the tax, but I'm not an idiot, and I do understand its need at this particular time. I mean, when I got on the council, my hope was to improve business, make bigger business, not bigger taxes. But then we got locked down with COVID and things happened. So I understand where you're kind of going with this, Mayor. I'm not, I mean, I can consider supporting it for the voters to vote on, but trying to do right now, instead of waiting for it to fully sunset, is, I see the strategy in it. I just, guess I'm just voicing my thoughts that I'm not a big fan of it, but I understand it.
Those are fair comments. Fair comments. Councilman Belzer.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm in support of definitely seeing Measure C move to another term, right? Second term, you might say. Timing wise, you know, I look at it kind of from this perspective. I look at it from a sales perspective, right? And I think, and correct me if I'm wrong, council, but I think we're supposed to be presenting an annual report on where we're at with Measure C. I know the last year, I don't think that we've actually done that. Maybe in the last 2 years, we've actually presented that publicly. But I think that looking at it and really to get the community on it, to try to build a campaign on it from now to this election cycle is a little bit short notice. You know, I mean, and I say that respectfully, right? I mean, there's definitely the need, but I think that we've got to show the constituency a little bit better and a little bit more in detail of how those dollars are being allocated, how they've been used, where the benefits are, trying to get that together, presented in a timely manner for people to see that, understand it, and believe in it by this election cycle might be a little bit difficult. And, you know, I look at that, especially with not having any of our reporting done up to this time. I think maybe, if I'm recollecting correctly, there's only one out of the last 4 years that we've actually given a Measure C report.
You addressed new council. Did you have a response?
Yeah, the city council did say it would give an annual report.
Okay, but I don't think we have in the last 2 or 3 years, have we?
our finance person is on vacation.
Yeah,
But,
sure.
but I'm not sure.
I believe the last report was 2020.
Okay, so we're a little bit behind in our promise to the public. I don't know. Those are my concerns as far as extending it, taking it into another phase. I support it. It's just I think the timing is crucial in how we go about doing it. You know.
If I may, in response, since I've shut my mouth up and put this up there. This is a motion to pursue. This does not put it on the calendar. It would involve public comment, feedback from council and public comment beyond presenting here at a council meeting on the same night of the State of the Union address, when you're not going to have a lot of public comment, right? So I think it should be fully vetted with the public, including up-to-date reporting. And this is just to pursue at a level appropriate to a deadline. I think the deadline is August 12th. So really the deadline to put it on, if you were going to shoot for it, would be something in July. So you had some wiggle room in case the documents were right the first time through. So again, this is not a hard and fast, it's not going to the ballot because we vote on it here tonight. This is to pursue and get all of the ducks in a row and find out what the public thinks about it. There might be pushback, even though without it in 26, even you can do a lot of things right between now and 26. I don't think we're going to make up 25% of the budget, 25% plus. So that's the reason for the pitch. Your comments are absolutely appropriate, Councilman Hill. Any other comments? Sir,
Question, more than comment. Although I will comment to say we do need to see those reports so we even know what we're talking about in the last 2 years. But we're looking at an election cycle that would be the 2022, 2024, and it sunsets in 2026. Does it sunset when in 2026? Is there a third election cycle that will be coming into it? Because it was voted in on an election cycle, right? So it should be 3 election cycles.
my sense is that it was immediately effective or almost immediately effective.
Right, so then it would
So 26
literally end on November,
Yeah.
basically, of
If you're voting on it
2026.
in 26, you're sitting there at the last minute hoping you get the money.
Our city code tells us when it's something. Specifically in 2026, not the end.
It is not the end of the year.
Not the end of the year, and we can look that up.
Okay.
Actually,
my question, I guess, is, do we have 2 election cycles or 3 election cycles to work on this?
well, I think we have a small gap in 26.
Depending on the 26th date.
Right. Okay. We'll see what that date is. And I would not want to have a lapse
Adam,
because
clerk, are
we
you verifying?
need this
Well,
definitely.
you know what we can do? We can leave this as just an introduction to the topic. We don't have to vote on this tonight. We can get more information and see where we stand. And I think that looks like that would be well received by the council.
To Chair,
Yes, sir.
talking about the election cycles, I mean, we have this election cycle, but we also have primary election cycles too, right? Our June election cycle, that's another avenue that we can go down to pursue.
There would be a primary election cycle in 24. Oh,
And
they are
26.
every each year.
Yeah.
Cycle.
So we would have one election cycle in 26 that we would be able to put it on the ballot before the sunset actually went into effect. I'm just saying there's more than just the 2. There's 4.
No, so excuse me, Mr. Mayor. So you're saying in 24, there's a midterm and then the November. Okay.
I'd be real nervous waiting until 26.
I would say we would like at least to have the opportunity to attempt 2 election cycles.
When I was busy helping fund new companies and getting them launched, we raised as much money as possible to last as long as possible. And I think that's all.
Well, Mr. Mayor,
Yes, sir.
I just think for the sake of tonight, I don't even know, I gotta be honest, I want to see those reports before I go out and try to sell it to our constituents.
That's
And we don't have those yet. So I think we might be just a little premature in going too far tonight. Now, if what we're voting tonight is just moving forward to get this information, then that makes sense.
And we don't have to take any formal action on that. We can just, what do we do, table this and bring it up again? Or there we go. Everybody okay with tabling this?
I
Do we need a
would,
motion on that, Councilor? Nope, it's tabled.
Okay.
well,
No objection.
I would recommend that you direct us to do something.
Well,
I figured you'd have the incentive based on what we're saying.
I do.
Okay, then do something. How's that? I don't know exactly what you.
We will research the election cycles and
I'm
see how
sorry.
many we have available to us versus when the tax sunsets. And at some point, we may want to start looking at bringing on a consultant to help us start figuring out how we would approach this as we did the last time.
A consultant, huh?
Mr. Mayor,
Yes, sir.
I think what we need back is the information to sell this to our constituents. That's what I think we need.
Well, we need.
I mean, I don't want to go out and not have the facts
We
as
need
we're
that. Plus
selling it.
We need to find sponsors because the city cannot finance any campaign to advance this on the ballot. We can only put it on the ballot in terms of advertising and promotion. That's all private money. And last time around, Larry Booth and David Lanza and other prominent business people in Marysville supported it. And in fact, I remember talking with Larry, and Larry's a lifetime friend of mine. I told him I was running for mayor against the incumbent, Ricky. He said, Ricky's done a hell of a job there. He got that Measure C through. And so it's real important to get that lined up also. So we'll have the city do what's appropriate to give us more information at the next meeting. And then we'll do some outreach with folks who might feel interested in sponsoring this financially with appropriate advertising. Anything beyond hell, I'll go out and knock on doors.
Well, so we will look at the timing and be prepared to present something on the timing and the cycles, as well as I had already discussed with our finance director and community development director, pulling information together for that annual report.
Good. There we go. Yes, sir.
Lastly, included in there is the cost of a consultant.
Yeah, I think we have a lead on one and we can probably get a price.
And I know it's less than 3.4 million a year. Amen. Okay, we'll move on then to agenda item number 4. And this again is something that I'd requested, so I will present it. On the agenda, it reads blight tax recommendation. Approve a motion to pursue actions to consider a tax assessment against blighted/vacant Marysville commercial properties. 1, direct the city attorney to determine feasibility and steps to place on the 2022 ballot. We'll talk about date later. And direct city staff. And 2, direct city staff to perform a preliminary survey to identify blighted/vacant commercial properties. Requested by yours truly. So it's up on the agenda now. I think we asked for public comment, and then I'll present more information on this, Madam Clerk. Any public comment?
No public comment, Mayor.
Thank you, ma'am. Then, with your permission, gentlemen, I'll present, I've handed out a handout on this, which are my notes, and I'll sort of read from them and ad lib as necessary. Again, three of us on the dais here campaigned in 2020, and others not that long ago, not that far in advance of that. And we've all developed a feeling for what has interested, what the citizens of the city are most concerned about. If I missed something here, I'll apologize, but I've listed my campaign for mayor in 2020. I personally knocked on the doors of more than 3,500 voters. I think it was closer to 4,000. The problems most frequently cited were homeless issues, degrading the quality of life for residents, Ellis Lake water quality, traffic and roads, decline of the downtown business district, and blighted and vacant commercial properties. Very quickly on these issues, there's been substantial progress on homeless issues in the past year, thanks in large part to Public Works, but mostly to our, and the fire department, also to the police department. There's been real progress, ways to go, but clear, recognizable progress. Ellis Lake is the focus of a plan by the city and funded by the Yuba Water Agency for water quality improvement. And that program unfolds beginning later this month. I think it's the week of the 21st to the 25th of March. The carp removal will be underway. And then once that is completed, the application of a chemical called Phoslock, or a substance called Phoslock, to take phosphates out of the water, lock them in the bottom. And it's the phosphates that feed the algae, we understand. Then we're going to find out how well that works. That's funded by the Water Agency, and we're in lockstep with them. Traffic and road issues are being addressed and are the subject of negotiations between the city and Caltrans. I won't go any deeper because those negotiations are part of litigation. And reversing the decline of downtown business district is the focus of multi-pronged efforts that will take time. And I know members of this council are actively involved with the business groups in downtown. They should be committed. I know Councilman Bells in particular, Councilman Gilchrist are very active and are to be commended. It took a long time for downtown to decline, and that's the kind of thing that doesn't turn on a dime. But I think there's been a change in the vector, and we'll see how it goes. Notably, and we'll move on to the topic of the agenda item, notably, and this is the truth, almost every voter I spoke with, when I said, well, what do you think about Marysville? What's troubling Marysville? They would say, what are you going to do about the Marysville Hotel? Many included questions and concerns about the State Theater, as well as other properties on E Street. There's substantial properties on E Street that are vacant and in decline. And D Street and the downtown business district in general. The properties that were specifically mentioned and asked about are all prominent in location, size, and presence in terms of creating negative impressions about our city, not only to residents, but to prospective residents and visitors, as well as a discouraging element to further development. Many of these properties are on the eastern terminus of the project underway to improve the function and beauty of the 5th Street corridor between E and the E Street and the 5th Street Bridge. And in fact, we have a groundbreaking there tomorrow, don't we? Yeah. Tomorrow morning. So right on the eastern terminus of this beautiful beautification project, we have the most recognized difficulties in terms of blight and vacancy in the city. Now, I've done some reading on this, and Washington DC has a system of blight and vacancy taxes. San Francisco, Oakland, Los Angeles, and cities across the country are looking at it or acting on it also. And here we are within this bowl, defined, our city is defined by the levies in terms of residential and commercial properties. We have recreational properties on the other side of the levies. We are of the size, and particularly with the government, with the county and state and 501 properties in Marysville, we have precious few commercial properties. We cannot, to use an extreme case, say someone comes in and buys up 60% of them and then lets them lay fallow. That'd be real difficult for the city of Marysville. We have to do something about it. The carefully crafted tax on blighted and vacant commercial properties in Marysville is an appropriate answer to the question, what are you going to do about X prominent commercial property? The purpose is to encourage the outcomes our city deserves, and quite frankly needs. There's only so much commercial property within our city limits. We cannot afford to let blighted and vacant properties lie fallow, thereby not contributing to the enjoyment and welfare of our residents, as well as the city's financial well-being. Now, it will take time to craft any appropriate legislation. The ordinances I've read are pages and pages of definitions, and the definitions are necessary to define specific circumstances of vacancy and blight, when it starts, when it ends, when a tax applies, and what have you. So it's complex. We may not have it, presuming we've moved forward from here, we may not have it fully vetted by the city council, together with feedback from residents and commercial property owners, in time to put it on the 2022 ballot for approval. That said, and I think this is important, if we move forward, the concept will be in the air. There will be notice that we're working on this, thereby giving our residents and commercial property owners time to think, adjust, and plan. If you were to ask me, and I think city attorney would agree with me, it's far more likely this would be on a 2024 ballot than a 2022, and city attorney is nodding approvingly of that. On this basis, I urge the council to approve the recommendation on this evening's agenda as a first step, just a first step in the process. It doesn't put it on the ballot, but it gets it in motion and it gets it in the air and becomes part of the calculus of property owners, and hopefully will inspire adjustments to their thinking and plans. And we've already asked for public comment on this, Madam Clerk. Okay, now, council members, someone must have something to say. Councilman Gilchrist.
Hey, I think this is I don't like taxes. Nobody does. However, in order to move forward the buildings that and the properties that are sitting idle, that we read about, embarrassingly so, on social media. How embarrassing is it to have to read over and over again about our blighted, empty, abandoned, festering, rotting, useless buildings? It's embarrassing, especially when you come from areas where progress occurs and you handle it. We must handle this. And fellow council, forgive me, I'm going to bring this up, but we're going to do this in tandem with the general plan update. Let me back up a bit. It's no wonder we are in this position. We've done nothing for 40 years, okay? We've done absolutely nothing about a general plan update. And I don't even think half of us know what a general plan is. It's a plan of action.
Okay,
And it starts with the public. No, this is really important. And I forgive me, this is my, you know, my acting background or whatever. I'm so passionate about this that I really don't mention it very much to spare you. But the blight tax scenario or the blight fee structure to encourage those that are holding on to buildings for whatever reason would include myself, as I too have elements in my building that I own that must be taken care of. And yet I don't do anything about it because no one has told me to. And I know that it will improve the conditions of my neighborhood and my business. I have a building across the street from me that is blighted seriously, and it's right next door to a perfectly renovated building that actually has a job opportunity sign hanging in front of it. And so the irony and the dichotomy is fascinating. So I'm getting off on a tangent, but I'll tell you what, I think it's important to look into doing this. I think it will improve real estate values and sales. It will encourage developers that we are now taking this situation seriously and that we actually have a positive vision for the city of Marysville, which we know has a lot to do with housing. Because let's face it, commercial on the planet is changing. And so we cannot bank on or count on the old business models that we used to. So these buildings really need to be looked at, those that are blighted. Okay, sorry. Thank you for listening.
Very quickly, Stuart, you made one comment that I'd just like to speak to, and that is you said something about you got some little problem with your building.
Oh,
Your building would not be a target. We're not. If you hung a picture incorrectly on the wall, we're not going to worry.
Well, let me bring this up, because the next step is what entity is going to determine what is taxable? What entity is deemed responsible for making these determinations? That's the one that I'm excited about, because really that would be the Planning Commission, the Police Department, the Fire Department. Those are the three entities that we have in place. And we know for a fact that the police department and the fire department have done an outstanding job with, based on, our staffing and our development opportunities.
Stuart, if I may.
Yes.
The tax would be applied according to the law.
According to the law, yes.
According to the discretion of people who execute the law.
The law would have to be written, and then the law would state, if you have an awning that's falling, you need to fix it.
It's not subjective. It needs to be objective, which speaks to the complexity.
Yes.
Of something like that.
And there's some, and we all know there are some major complexities regarding a lot of the buildings in downtown Marysville. And so this is really an exciting challenge.
We're a little deeper into it now, if I may start.
Yes.
We're a little deeper. I'll add a little more meat on the bones that I presented earlier. And that is, it would not be an ad valorem property tax. That's covered by Proposition 13, constitutional amendment, and you cannot go after someone on an ad valorem tax. This would be targeted at conditions of commercial properties. And it would probably have to be something on a per square foot basis, and maybe per square foot for, if it's vertical basis, what have you. And again, that's getting into that's really getting into the weeds, but it would not be an ad valorem property tax. It could not be. It would have to come at it from a different angle based on the condition. And we're not, it's not the kind of thing where you're going to go out after every vacant lot in town. It's the kind of thing where there's enough prime targets that the changing the status of those properties will change Marysville in a way that that everybody in the city. I think if this makes it to the ballot, it gets 85% of the vote, yes. And the other 15% just weren't paying attention. Anyway, I apologize for that. There must be other comments.
Thank you.
Councilman Hudson.
Thank you, through the chair. So as it reads here, I could probably find some way to get on board with it, but it's a slippery slope. I mean, there is a lot that needs to be decided before I can fully step behind it. So I appreciate you presenting this in baby steps, and the fact that this is the first step of, you know, going after vacant properties. I truthfully don't want to live in an HOA. Okay. I mean, and I don't want it, that's at the discretion of the individuals on a board or whatever the case is. And I don't think you're going down that direction. I think that potentially there's already, as Councilman Gilchrist mentioned, codes within law enforcement, fire codes, building code and so forth. And those are being enforced as they sit forth. But for blighted communities or blighted properties to be fall under some sort of governance or an ordinance or a law is a slippery slope. I can get behind what it currently states right now, but I would really want to see the meat of the full presentation that you said is going to be crafted over the next year and a half, being able to say what's going to be the authority on that, because I could easily step out of that support.
For example, again, I'll add just a little bit more flesh to the deal. In Washington, D.C., the vacancy tax is half the blighted tax. If it's a blighted, usually and vacant property, then it's twice as much. If it's someone came in and just bought a prime piece of real estate and decided they're going to sit on it forever, well, there's going to be some encouragement in the way of a tax to do something with that property, or otherwise you're going to contribute in another fashion to the city.
So with respect to that, Mayor, as I understand and appreciate that, you said on the research you've done to it in the cities that you cited are definitely not what I would compare Marysville to, you know, like Washington, Bay Area, things of that sort. And every city you mentioned there, I mean, trumps our budget by 100 times. It's kind of one of those things that I am concerned. In fact, you're saying there is not a lot of commercial property. We look at the zoning map here. We've got C1, C2, C3, and CH, and it's probably a good third of Marysville and so forth that is actual commercial property, that there does happen to be a lot of residential buildings and living dwelling spaces within. Yeah, I like the idea of being able to clean up properties and so forth. The two commercial properties that I have that are actually in light industrial zone, I did it by choice because that was me. Now, my neighbor, it's their property. They can do what they want with the property. And, you know, I may not like it. I may go have a conversation person to person, kind of one of those things, but I'm not necessarily going to support the idea of creating a rule just because I might arbitrarily think otherwise. So again, as you wrote it down here for a vacant commercial properties, and then direct staff to perform preliminary identified blighted vacant properties, which I'm pretty sure the police chief has probably already done at one point with other projects he's had over the years. Maybe I'm not. Forgive me if I spoke out of place on that. It's one of those things that I wouldn't mind knowing that number myself. It's a slippery slope. I just feel the need to say that, and the fact that that whatever ordinance is created could be changed by a couple of verbs within its ordinance over the years, and then all of a sudden here we are, Marysville's now an HOA that sits in front of some sort of other type situation. If we don't go there, I stand corrected. As it sits right now, what you present to me, I think can handle it. May not be in here in a year to be on this dais and have comment on it, but I would comment from a public position if it were to change in the direction I couldn't support. So thank you.
Any other comments? Councilman Belson.
Yeah. You know, there's a lot of, it's just kind of having a generalized preliminary conversation. I think there's a lot of areas and a lot of ground to cover. Very easy to get down in specifics and go down, you know, quote unquote rabbit trails, if you will. But just some things that I kind of think about just in generally, just kicking off the topic. I agree with you 110% that properties like the hotel, State Theater, and others around Marysville have been a topic of conversation for many, many, many years, right? About what do we do about them? What do we do? You know, I've always kind of had the perspective is you build as a city, you build economic momentum past them, and then that inspires other developers and other buyers and other people to come in. And pick them up and rehab them as the economy is moving, right? Which I think we're doing, making progress in with some of our proposals on B Street and some of our economic advances that we've seen happen over the last year and a half. I think there's good movement forward in that, right? Nonetheless, you still end up, regardless of how a city is doing economically, you still end up with blighted properties, right? And so you have, for whatever reason, people that forget about their property or they've inherited it and just pay the property taxes and don't care about it, whatever it is. And those things need to be addressed. We know what the eyesores are in town. I don't need to mention them again. And so is there a need to be able to get a little bit more aggressive in getting people to deal with those properties? Sure. And I look at a blight tax like this as a more aggressive move beyond what we already have, which I'd be curious to know, and I don't want to overwhelm staff, but just in regards to this topic, I'd be curious to really see a solid presentation from all departments on what we have already on the books code enforcement wise on some of these properties that maybe we're not enforcing, that maybe we don't have the staff to enforce. You know, I've talked with Jim a little bit yesterday about this, saying, how much code do we already have on the books that says you've got to fix your awning, you've got to do this, you've got to clean this up, you've got to do that, that we don't have the staff to enforce? And just to recap, we took a code enforcement from our community development department, moved it over to a CSO position, right? This council did this shortly after we were elected. I think we're still, Chief, correct me if I'm wrong, I think we still only have one CSO position filled right now? Correct. So, you know, I think we're letting a lot of things fall through the cracks that we probably already have laws on the books, right? That could be enforced. And I mean, maybe we need to talk about what that looks like to try to get the code enforcement position back under community development. That's another topic that maybe we can have in the next couple meetings. But I think that we probably already have some tools that we can put into motion very quickly and not have to wait until 2024 to try to help expedite some of these things. But nonetheless, in the big picture, you still end up with blighted properties. And so I think it's worth having a conversation and a continued conversation about. On the vacancy side of things, it gets in, from my perspective, it gets into challenging waters. And because how you define vacancy can be really complex. You know, I could own a commercial building, a warehouse, and I could pay my property taxes on it, and it could be just a warehouse from the outside that I prefer to use as personal storage. Or maybe I just prefer not to do anything at all with it on the inside. But it's not bothering anybody on the outside. And even though there's not a business or a manufacturer or somebody that's generating jobs or generating taxable income, which is our desire from the city's perspective, doesn't necessarily mean that I'm violating something or that I'm violating or being a nuisance to the city. Does that make sense? So just because an owner has an empty building doesn't necessarily mean, or a vacant building doesn't necessarily mean they need to be penalized for it. I'd want to see, if we're having that, I'd want to see it be a very long-term and very blatant vacancy factor. Like for example, a hotel. Hotel's been there for 30 years vacant. When did it shut down? 82, something like that. So almost 40 years. That's obviously a vacant issue, you know. But I in a sense, I agree with you, Brad, that it can start to go down a slippery slope. And the danger of that, the danger of pressing, and I think our community development director would agree with me on this, if you put too much pressure on property owners with vacancies, then it pushes those property owners to make quick decisions about tenancy that goes in there. And what you risk is the potential of putting bad tenants in buildings, tenants that are underqualified, tenants that don't take care of the outside, tenants that maybe don't get their business licenses and they aren't in compliance with the city codes and the rules and the laws. And I'll be quite honest, we have a lot of that already. And so there's a concern with the vacancy side that that's what it would push owners to do, is to make hard line decisions about taking a bad tenant opposed to waiting it out and trying to find the right tenant as economic growth and economic prosperity happens in Marysville. With that, you get better quality tenants that want to come into town, right? And so those are just kind of some of my preliminary thoughts, that we may already have the mechanisms.
Result
significant be needed. The vacancy tax, we need to be very, very careful about, in my opinion, about how we go about that and not cause more grief than what's already here. So
I agree with you. A warehouse in good condition, not obviously blighted. That's not the kind of thing where you were vacancy. That's why pages and pages of definitions to take account of these circumstances. In the business district, I think it's a different question. And there's certain time, obviously, property owners should be given time to find tenants that are appropriate and solid, and won't be a problem to either the owner or the city. But for example, the building on the northeast corner of 4th and D, it's been vacant forever. It's a prime location, and I wouldn't feel guilty about encouraging the owner to do something, because there's opportunities. There should be opportunities. I was chatting with someone today who's had access. I thought that the State Theater was merely vacant, and we were city manager and I, and we were chatting with someone today who's been inside that building recently. He said you almost need a gas mask. The smell of cat urine is so strong throughout the building. So that's obviously a blighted building also. And Dan Flores is reaching out, trying to find the owner and contact the owner. And we need to have a conversation. And again, this is a process. Again, we're not putting something on the ballot this year or any other year, but this would get the process going so that we could get a better feel for what would be, for how it's been done elsewhere, and what would work in Marysville, what could work in Marysville, and choose those elements that we think would be most effective. And we can always just choose the elements that go after the big problems. And again, there are big problems, and I think all of us feel strongly about doing something to help change the direction on those properties. Yes, sir.
Two more quick comments here. I totally agree with what Councilman Bells is saying, is that I already know there's plenty of mechanisms within our ordinance to be able to go ahead and go forth with certain things. For instance, the theater you're talking about, I know that the city pretty much made the owner about 15 years ago paint the building because it was in such bad shape. And so we ended up, I was part of it when I was part of one of the city departments, that our legal counsel found a loophole and made them go do what was necessary to at least bring the place up. That being said, I do have a question, food for thought, mostly on this thing, and cut my nose off here or whatever the case is, and don't mean to be rude here, but if we're going to make the idea of any sort of vacant or blighted property tax, let's not leave the city of Marysville out, because the city of Marysville owns a rather large chunk of vacant land that could be considered blight that we have not been able to do anything with for quite some time. So we would have to make sure that, hey, are we going to tax ourselves? Don't really want to get into it. Just throwing that out there for food thought on however you write this thing and kind of go from there.
okay.
To the chair, could I participate in this?
Just a minute. Vice Mayor, your turn.
Thank you. I could probably, I'm a little bit following Councilman Hudson and Bells is here. I could get behind, we're looking at approve a motion to pursue actions to consider tax assessment against blight vacant net. I don't have a problem with that. But the things that, some of them are just what they've already said, but I want to say the ones that would definitely I would be looking at. First of all, probably the most obvious one is what are our current rules and ordinances? How are they enforced? What's the difference? What would be the difference between a tax versus a fine, which I'm guessing could possibly already be in the ordinances. I'm not sure. I know this is going to be time consuming, so hopefully in the process we could also work with our community developer here. There's been a lot of facade programs to help with these, because I'm having a hard time with the vacancy. I don't have a problem with the blight. And being boarded up like the Marysville Hotel, let's use that for an example, is blight. That's not a finished front, that's empty. I would go for that. But a good example is the Cargill building, which still is nice looking, commercial building, it's empty. You know, so to just say, because they're vacant, then we're trying to force a landlord into contracting for something that may not be the best suit for that. And I'll use the Cargill building again. It's hard to force the owner to put somebody in that building when there's very limited amount of leaseors that could probably even rent that building. So again, I'm not against this, looking into this, but I think all of these things will need to be addressed. A big deal for me is the biggest part, I guess, is the vacancy. Being extremely careful where we go with vacancies. I will reiterate the statement about our own properties, making sure we have those kept up too. But I think one of the things we definitely need to look at before we start making too many changes, and again, I'm sure it's not going to be on this year's ballot, so we're going to have some time, but is what's our current rules? What's the ordinances? What's going to be the difference between tax and fines and enforcement? You know, we're at a position where we've said we put another CSO officer on, but all we did was move one from a lower position to an upper position. And all of that's going to have to be a piece of this puzzle. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
If I may respond here first. During the 80s, I spent most of my time as a tax lawyer. I'm not a big fan of taxes. My clients loved me. They hated taxes and I was on their side. So this is not my knee-jerk reaction to go to a tax. I've been given a lot of thought to this. What this does do, it does change the economics. And for example, the most difficult person to negotiate with is someone whose expectations are unrealistic. And there may be circumstances where property owners' expectations are, well, I should get $20X per square foot, you know, and the real value, if Dom went in there, he'd say, you'd be lucky to get 8, right? Something like that. And it does have an impact on the economics. Or it may be, you know, this, I'm not suggesting crippling numbers in my own head. You know, we're not taking down, we're not going to go to the bank with this, but it would be enough to inspire a fresh look at how they should approach their property and manage their property. And if I thought that in code enforcement, everything you say on code enforcement, I embrace completely. I concerned code enforcement won't get the economic activity, because the purpose of this is to inspire economic activity. Now, there's the article I'm reading from. If you go to blight tax, government, it's easy to find this article. And it says, you know, what are the results? Well, the results are uneven. And I think the reason they focus on DC is DC is also tightly defined. And they've only got so much property. And they've got a heck of a lot of government property. Now the government pays DC fees because they have so much property, but they're getting like $10 million a year. We're not going to get anything like that, and we don't have to. But I would like to think that properly constructed, properly applied, this could inspire economic activity, the economic activity you speak to, Don. So that's the proposal. And again, the recommendation is have the city attorney come back as to feasibility. And I think we're all crossing off 2022. I'll make a friendly amendment to myself, 24 ballot. And direct city staff to perform a preliminary survey of identifying blighted properties. Vacant properties are easier to define, but define the blighted properties. And again, until this conversation I had this morning about the State Theater, this afternoon, I would have thought the State Theater was merely vacant. It's clearly blighted. And again, tax is higher on that.
To the chair.
Yes, sir.
One last thing, just in response, you responded to mine there. I think I'm going to use Councilman Hudson's word, slippery slope. When there's expectations of what a property's worth, I think we're going to have to be careful who's deciding that. And I'm going to use a same example that I used, the Cargill building. That Cargill building is worth a certain amount of dollars per foot if you're putting cannabis in there. It's worth a whole different amount of money if they opened it up and did it for storage. So when you speak of, the expectations that someone might have, I think, again, that's going to be a real careful area to pry into, to determine who's deciding that. Who's deciding that property is worth X, Y, or Z, so much per square foot, whatever. So again, reading the first sentence on here of this, I'm in support of that moving forward. But I just want to make it clear, I think there's a lot of topics that's going to need to be looked at.
Indeed. Again, the ordinance I've read runs volumes. It's not volumes, it's overstated, but it is not just a few sheets of paper. And I think it's going to be helpful just having this in the air, the fact we're talking about it. And it's a serious discussion at the council. And we're working on details, and this is the kind of thing that I've been chatting with Brent, city attorney, about this, and we both decided that just working through definitions and getting an understanding of what would be captured by this, what's fair, what do the voters think, is a process. And but again, this was the question that was asked with the most emotion, with the most interest of all of the questions I heard when I was out campaigning. And I would feel remiss if I didn't propose something like this and pursue it. And I want to personally publicize this issue as we move forward and let the residents know we're talking about it, and talk with community groups about it. And again, this makes it to the ballot, anything reasonable, it's going to get 85% of the vote. I think that's an absolute no-brainer. And so I want to be on the right side of that. And a lot of the questions and concerns that were expressed today need to be addressed, and those are addressed in definitions and construction of an appropriate ordinance. So I'll call the question. Do we have a motion to approve with the change from 2022 to 2024?
I'll make a motion.
Do we have a second?
I'll second.
We have a motion and a second. Madam Clerk, a roll call vote.
Councilmember Belva,
Yeah.
Councilmember Gilchrist,
Yes.
Councilmember Hudson.
As it is written, I've changed my mind. I'll put a no on that.
I'm sorry, that was a no vote. Okay. Vice Mayor Bettacavoli
Yes.
and Mayor Branson.
Yes. Thank you all.
Might I ask for some clarification and make a suggestion?
Please do.
Um,
It's already been passed.
I know, but just want to make sure that we're moving in the right direction.
Sure.
Vice Mayor Bettacavoli mentioned that we bring back the current ordinances in effect, which I think is an excellent idea, and present that because that would determine the second item that was passed, direct city staff to perform a preliminary survey to identify blighted vacant commercial properties. I would intend to use our current definitions in our current ordinances to determine what is blighted. That's the only benchmark I have.
Yeah, we would want to see. I'm not familiar with the definition of blighted property in our codes. That'd be interesting to see. And I've seen different definitions of blighted property.
We'll start with finding those definitions and bringing those back to council, and in parallel with looking at the inventory.
I think we've done a wonderful thing here, just getting this in the air. I think it'll help the citizens, our residents will see a flicker of light at the end of the tunnel maybe, and the property owners will understand that there's concern about this, and hopefully we can have some progress that is a win-win for everybody. Ma'am, Florence?
Oh, to the chair, one comment, one quick comment. I think, and maybe this would be within the plan already, but this would probably be something to have individual discussions with council members or in twos that to help condense it so you're not all over the place, but to see where there was somewhat of consensus on different issues. And then just last thing, Mr. Mayor, I want to tell you, I don't think it was unique to your campaign. We all probably got that same sense every time we all were out walking. So I think it's going the right way.
Thank you. And again, I plan on making a personal investment in publicizing this notion, not in detail, but conceptually, so that it is clearly in the air. And I think that will be a benefit to the city. Committee reports. Anybody have a committee report? Raise hand. Vice Mayor.
I don't think we've brought this back, but the regional waste management is getting very sticky. We've had some spirited meetings from the community. The new recycling programs, most forcefully around food and restaurants. And I think there's going to be this isn't going to be over too quickly. But that all being said, all of us on the board did agree, according to council, if we pass to move forward with the program, it gave us up to 2 years before fines started. So I think when I say this is going to get drawn out, I don't necessarily think by us, but I think within the state, there's still going to be a lot going on. But something that we'll kind of stay up on. But there are some significant changes that would significantly impact the city. So.
Happy ones? That didn't sound like it. Any other committee reports? Seeing none, we'll move on to council correspondence. Madam Clerk.
None for this meeting, Mayor.
Thank you, ma'am. Mr. City Manager.
Hoping not to steal anybody's thunder. I have a few items. First of all, cannabis distribution. The business owner paid for his license and should be up and running as we speak, correct, Chief? So that's good news. I'll let somebody else discuss Bryant Field. But we are working on the bleachers down at the softball field. The Public Works crew was down there painting those today, and they are starting to look pretty good. Of course, 5th Street, we have groundbreaking tomorrow, and they have the contractor, American, has gone in there and very aggressively started working on that project, so that's good news. Oya Mediterranean restaurant is open now, and I'm hearing it's very good. I might stop and try and get something there after this. Mayor mentioned Ellis Lake. Carp removal between the 21st and 25th. We don't have the exact date yet, but that's the week we're targeting. And then the Foslock treatment would follow, hopefully before the Kiwanis Fishing Derby, so that they can have that. B Street, we're still moving forward on. I think it's almost closing, or bid response closing. What is the date on that? March 24th. So March 24th for B Street property, the RFQ will be due by the responses to the RFQ will be due then. And then last but not least, it's my 1-year anniversary exactly today. So I survived. And I did get most of my stuff out of my house, Vice Mayor.
Okay, let's see. Again, council comments, requests. Vice Mayor, I'll let you go first. Any council comments?
Just mainly about the ball field and the fence. I don't want to go into too much everything with the ball field and the Gold Sox, but I know it is moving forward. The work that was done Saturday was almost unbelievable. And it was, I'd like to thank Saleh, and I forget what was the name of the men's group?
Feather River Men's Center.
The way they got that done, you guys all know me, I'm not an early bird, so I wasn't the first one there. We know that. But at the same time, within 2 hours, they had the whole thing cleaned up. Councilman Bells was there. It was just unreal. So I want to thank all of them that worked on that. And for Public Works, our guys are doing a great job too, staying with that. Mark Molner's guys that were out there too, working on that fence. So big thing now is we got to find all the money. We got to find the money to get it finished. So working on that. And as for the new restaurant, I'm there Thursday night with my mother's 91st birthday.
Councilman Dawson?
Yeah, to kind of piggyback on the ballpark, it was actually pretty much cleaned up within 45 minutes to 50 minutes of arrival. I mean, it was that fast. I thought it was going to take about 3 hours roughly to get done. And those guys kicked butt. Everybody kicked butt. It was a successful day. Simultaneously, there's another crew of people that was coming down B Street, 1st Street, and C Street, cleaning and weeding and prepping and doing a lot of work and cleanup work in the Chinatown area in preparation for the parade this next weekend. So I want to acknowledge that group of people too. There's a lot of movement going around and a lot of good things happening. Yeah, people seem to be energetic and optimistic about where Marysville is going. We have a lot of things in motion. I'm excited about our groundbreaking project tomorrow with 5th Street, and there's just a lot of real good positive things happening. So I hope we can keep this momentum going. You know, I made a comment in one of our last items on the blight. I think it's worthwhile to talk about a little bit just in regards to, you know, we've got a new community development director, and we've got Christina with us too, in talking about what possibly maybe what it looks like to try to take that, to get that staff position back underneath community development, where there can be some code enforcement that comes out of that side of the aisle, like there has been in the past, and there always has been. And I think that maybe it's worthwhile to possibly have that conversation. You know, we moved that position over to the police department, and we've had a vacant CSO position over there for over a year now, without being able to fill it. And maybe we'd have better luck filling it underneath the context of a different definition. And so I think in our next agenda or our next council meeting, I'd like to see that as an agenda for discussion, an item for discussion about what that looks like to possibly take that back and put it back underneath that position, put it back underneath community development or code enforcement, you know, specifically. So, I mean, it's been a vacant, we moved it to PD and it's been vacant for a year, or we've still only had one. So there's been ample time to find a person for that position, even in the raise increase, which I guess we promoted our own guy from within side. So we're back to the lower income CSO position. Is that correct, Chief? Okay.
Chief, where are we at?
So back to where we were, square one, you know. Maybe we'll have better luck finding somebody for another department.
Just, sorry to interrupt. Where are we at with the recruitment?
So currently right now there's one back.
Okay.
We got somebody to clarify the position itself.
And I guess just if we're going to have that discussion to move the position, we don't want to fill that position prior to if we're going to have that discussion.
I would leave it to management to define who does what. Personally. I'm sorry, did I interrupt your?
From my perspective, it doesn't matter which department the position is. We need the position to do the enforcement. And,
somebody.
A body with direction.
Let's see.
Okay.
Anything else? Councilman Hudson, your turn.
Well, no.
I'm sorry, I thought you were done.
I was debating on whether to pursue that or not. So understandably, you've got somebody in backgrounds, but because of the hastiness to move forward, let's put it on the agenda item for the
No,
next
I
meeting.
think that's,
So,
that's fine.
no, we'll have a discussion about
Sure.
whether to pull back a CSO position from the police department and possibly put it over in community development.
So we will hold off on, well, I guess we can bring it to council next meeting and we would hold off on actually hiring the person until we have that discussion.
Correct. Now I'll yield my time.
Tempted to make time limits going forward. Quick. Councilman Hudson.
So, you know, I've had my time in those steamy conversations on this dais. I'm over it, but it's, I do appreciate the idea of being able to look at other things. I'm on that subject matter that we voted on for a potential blighted tax. I know that there are other options and things that we could do, and I'd like to hear things from staff with the direction that was given on projects that we can go forth. I know that there was a time that we found grant funds to be able to match funds that were put into certain particular businesses and so forth. So that being said, moving away from that, I am looking forward because I'm happy to see 5th Street finally starting to move, because that was in this city staff's lap for years. And here I am 3 years sitting here and it just now kind of happened. So it's awesome. That was before my time and before, I think, Bruce's time. We were trying to make things work on that. So I'm very happy to see that going. And I'm happy to go and represent it tomorrow when we do our shovel breaking. I wanted to add a little bit more about what I heard was going on in the community with the baseball park and so forth. There was a little bit of a buzz in my business by the patrons. They were just excited to see things moving in the city of Marysville. It was kind of cool. They were excited to talk about the baseball park, and they were excited to talk about, you know, 5th Street, and they were excited to talk to me, and I did my best to avoid them, but it was there. And they all got good positive vibes to say. So I just wanted to say thank you to staff and everything that we finally made some things like that move and going in a great direction. Look forward to Bok Kai this Saturday. I miss those dinners, you know, but it's okay. Look forward to seeing one of the oldest parades in the state of California happen here in Marysville again. Thank you.
Councilman Gilchrist.
Happy anniversary, City Manager Jim Shedd. It's good to have you here.
Thank you.
Related to the code enforcement, I take walks most mornings through my neighborhood and other neighborhoods, and I see things that I saw far too often when I was campaigning. Cars parked in front yards, boats parked in front yards. I don't think you're able to park I think it's Chief, can someone park their boat on the street in front of their house? Yeah. Well, so some of them are there forever. Anyway, so what I've been doing, and I'm slowing down because I remembered that we only have one code enforcement person. I'm on a walk and flip. These people are parking cars, and yard cars are one of those things. It's the first broken window concept. The minute you have one, then you have another, and the neighborhood goes down. And I would hear complaints from people on the campaign trail. Look at that place down the street. It needs to be dealt with, and that's something as we go forward, once we have another code enforcement officer on board, the CSO, is to encourage people to take photos and define what it is and send it into a collection point at the police department so they can be dealt with in order. And it's one of those things that'll take a while to beat that down. That is terribly important to our community. You can't let residential neighborhoods decline, and it's not that because they're bad people who do this, it's just that they're making mistakes It's hurting the entire community. It hurts property values. It hurts the enjoyment of properties. It needs to be dealt with. So, Chief, let me know when you got someone on board, and I'm going to promote that personally. Next regular meeting will be held March 15th, 2022 at 6 p.m. Notice to public, Madam Clerk, do you have something to read? And then I have something to read regarding closed session.
Yes, thank you, Mayor. After the closed session, the City Council will leave the council chambers and the meeting will be adjourned by operation of law due to lack of a quorum. If there is any reportable closed session action, a report will be made at the beginning of the next regular council meeting. I ask that after the closed session item descriptions are read by the mayor, that all members of council, applicable consultants, and staff join the closed session meeting. Thank you.
And we will be adjourning to closed session. If any member of the public would like to comment, you're attending this meeting in person, please complete a speaker's card, return it to the city clerk. If you're on Zoom, raise your hand. Whether here in person or attending via Zoom, when called upon, please give your name for recording. You're requested to address your comments to the council and not to the audience. Do we have anyone wishing to speak on the closed session items?
Not tonight, Mayor.
Thank you, ma'am. Oh, I have to read the items. Pardon me, we're not adjourned yet. We're going to have two items, and the city manager has asked that we do them in reverse order. B, pursuant to Government Code 45957, public employee performance evaluation regarding the following personnel: city manager, 1-year anniversary. Okay, and then item number A, pursuant to Government Code section 54956.8, conference with real property regarding real property. And here's the code for it, 02001001001000. City negotiator, Jim Shad, is that, which property is this?
It's our sewer fund in the county.
Thank you. And the negotiating parties are Richard Wilbur Ranch, under negotiation terms and price. We're adjourned. Thank you, everybody.
This to update the Yuba City Municipal Code to establish regulations for the urban lot splits and 2-unit developments in accordance with Senate Bill 9 and adopt regulations of waive the first reading.
Thank you, Mr. Moody. Is there any questions from the council? Sir.
Owner occupied. It seemed like there was a paragraph there that talked about for the junior accessory dwelling units. Does the owner have to, for the full accessory dwelling unit, does the owner have to reside in the main or the pre-existing residence?
Yeah, I don't know if I can look the code up. Shannon, I'm pretty sure that is a stipulation. I don't know if we ever actually have an enforcement mechanism to prove that, but that is the way the code reads.
Yeah, and that is a challenge, is even though you have to be either in the junior or the main one and owner occupied in one of those two, there's really no enforcement mechanism under state law, which makes it difficult for us to actually apply that.
Okay. The second, there's two other questions, and I see Chief Alexander on the phone, so we're not on the phone, but on the screen maybe. But the first one's probably for you, Mr. Moody, on the setback. So they've eliminated, I mean, these things can be right up against the property line?
Yeah. So, I mean, literally 4 feet. So 4 feet. And so, and it gets tricky, right? And so each one, there's really is a strategy on these ADUs if somebody really wants to do one. But theoretically, if you want a separate ADU, a standalone new building, 4 foot off the property line, 16 foot tall. And then there's even some other caveats in there. That
vaulted ceilings and these things?
The top of it has to be 16 feet if it's that close to the fence. Yeah, however, and then there's a caveat that if it's an older building. So if you go into and I'm trying to kind of plan it for our downtown area, some of these areas that are built in the 50s where they have these accessory buildings, that were built on the property line. We have a stipulation in there that says pre-1990 or 91 that they could then retro that building if it could meet standards. And so if somebody comes in and says, hey, I got this existing building, it's been here since before 1990, I want to utilize it. There's an option for them to utilize that and convert it to an ADA, but they need to bring it up to code. And so there's definitely it's not just throwing drywall up. They need to make sure it doesn't blow over and have, some real requirements on what that means.
Is there a separate section within the building code that addresses the construction features of these ADUs, or is this a tough shed with some?
No, it falls. So they will need, and that's part of the difficulty is that it will fall under the current building standards. And so that's where some of the folks that come in that just say, hey, I want to, this non-permitted lean-to, and they want to turn it into something. It's no, it's talk. This is what you need: structural calcs, insulation, building code standards, and we'll work through that. But it's a current building code standard.
And this is the segue that maybe the chief might have to answer. I know that in new building construction nowadays, there's required for fire sprinklers. Do these require these at all?
I do not have that question really answered. I know that they need to follow current code. And so that I could get a hold of the chief building official, but it would have to be exempt based on the size, if not, but they do need to follow current code.
Could you make that requirement? Could we institute something more restrictive?
If I could jump in here through the mayor, we were actually, our team has been discussing these sorts of options. Bottom line is we don't know.
Okay.
And we have discussed the requirements for sprinklering either in the kitchen or throughout the entire residence. The challenge we have is if we're not requiring it of other units of similar density, we need to make sure that we apply the rule with regards to sprinkling equally. Currently under the building code, you generally don't have to sprinkler these residential buildings. Now, our concern is from a safety perspective, and I think this is what you're putting your finger on, Councilmember Boomgarden, is you can now have up to 4 times density on a single family residential lot with 4-foot setbacks for our firefighters to be getting through there. Additional lot coverage with regards to your floor area ratio. There's not much open space out there, and we don't have sprinklering. So our initial thought is, as we explore this, and this is still a brave new world, that we provide as much local authority that we can in this particular ordinance. And then as we work through additional steps that we come back, or we may come back to the city council with recommendations for sprinklering or potential driveway approaches or other things that we've been addressing.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions?
You can definitely follow up with that information before it comes back for ordinance.
When we instituted the sprinkler ordinance for residences here in Yuba City way back when we had to make certain findings, but we were able to do so. And we were able to be more restrictive. I didn't know if this current restrictions or whatever prohibit us from being more restrictive.
It doesn't expressly prohibit us, but given the intent of the law, it makes certain things difficult. And we would have to make findings with regards to unique topographical, I think I said that correctly, it's getting late, climatic and unusual conditions that we have within the region. And frankly, I think that we could probably make those findings, but we would have to do it as part of our building code update, make sure that we integrate the 2 ordinances together. And at least in the interim, if the council is inclined to introduce this ordinance tonight, it gives you the first step of tools in the toolbox in order to address these issues.
Thank you.
Okay. Any other questions? Okay. Hearing none, we will move to open the public hearing. So the public hearing on Senate Bill 9 and accessory dwelling unit ordinance amendments is now open. Is there anyone from the public who would like to address the council on this issue? Please provide your statement via public comment. State your name, address for the record. Do we have any public comment? Please come to the podium, give us your name, address, and your comments, please.
Virginia Smith, 1979. Oh, sorry. Virginia Smith, 1979 Elmer Avenue, Yuba City. And I was just wondering, so you have one of these ADU buildings, can later on somebody sell that and then it end up being two houses, or will it just have to go together as one sell?
An ADU by itself is on the same parcel. And so it would be, typically that's, unless it was a creative sale, typically that all sells together. But with the SB9, the urban lot splits, it would allow you to create an independent parcel that you could then sell independently. It would have its own title and ownership and could be financed separately. And so between the both of them, somebody could do the lot split, then build the second residence or ADU on that independent parcel.
What if somebody had it already built one? Will they allow them to split that and sell them separately?
Yes, if it meets the criteria.
Okay.
Any other
I just note, because I know Mike, Patricia, they live right on the border in the county. And there's been a little bit of talk when I've been talking with the county on how they're going to handle it. And different agencies have taken different approaches. And so with Sutter County, most of theirs is agriculture. It's not necessarily single family residential. And so they have a state residential or ag different holdings. And so my understanding for Sutter County, and definitely reach out to them, is that they are processing this through policy to follow the state law. And so we're taking an approach, we're actually amending the municipal code. We're putting in the criteria to be specific on how we have it. Where Sutter County, I believe they're creating a policy kind of brochure and saying, hey, we're following these policy procedures because there's not a lot of applicable properties. But please reach out to Sutter County planning and they can walk you through any of that.
All right. Any other public comment? Anything online?
We do have a public comment online from Heather Essman. She says to Mr. Moody that she needs help with her junior ADU.
Again, I would more than welcome to set up some time to meet with her.
Okay. Any other comments online?
No additional comments.
All right.
Mr. Mayor, if I may.
Yes, sir.
The one time you don't ask, I got you. Sorry.
Speak earlier, so you got me.
Ben, we bring up an interesting point here. Would anybody with an ADU, would they be able to split their parcel off? Because we talk about access. If you just have a gate along the side of the main residence to get to an ADU, I mean, it would make sense I can't just sell my backyard to somebody.
This is basically saying you can.
Even without access.
You're going to have, I haven't seen how people have done it, but it's just access. So typically where I see that is on a map where they call out some sort of access easement. And so I'm not quite sure how creative people will get. You would think that they'd want a parking spot and a clear way to the back property, but theoretically somebody could, call out an access easement. So it's the other person's property. You have access to walk across it, to go through the back gate and along the house. And then your property would start on the back.
All right.
So they're definitely creative, and I could see where there's a little, depending on the parcel, depending on each house layout and kind of how people want to, there's going to be a little bit of strategy on how to work through it.
It's still kind of new, then we don't really have solid answers on that.
Yeah, I mean, it's going to be, okay, how big's your parcel? Where's that 40% threshold for the split? And then where do you want to put the house, and how does that set back? And then how are you going to get utilities back to it? Yeah. Where okay, kind of the Pandora's box starts opening up.
All right, thank you.
Through the mayor, you made me think of a question. This is happening throughout the state.
Correct.
Okay, I just want to get that clear. Thanks.
All right. Any other comments? Okay. No more online?
No further comment.
All right. With that, and hearing no further comments, we will close the public hearing and bring this matter back to the council for action.
Okay, I move to introduce an ordinance to update the Yuba City Municipal to establish regulation for urban lot splits and 2-unit development in accordance with the Senate Bill 9 and adopt amendments to regulation of accessory dwelling units and junior accessory dwelling units by the title only, waive the first reading.
A motion?
Second.
Second by Councilmember Baumgarten. All those in favor say aye. Aye. All those opposed say nay. Motion carries.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Moody. That will bring us to the future agenda items. Is there any, this is an opportunity for us to discuss with the city manager about things that came up tonight that you'd like to have brought back at a later date. Is there any items that we'd like to have brought back at a later date by the council? Hearing none, we're going to move on to reports and communications, and we will start with the city manager's report. Ms. Langley, you have the floor.
So good evening. March 29th, we do have a homeless workshop scheduled here with City Council at 6 p.m. And so staff's prepping for that workshop. We're also into budget time. And so departments are getting together, not only their capital improvement program budget requests, but also their operating budget requests. The build funds. So there's a lot of webinars taking place related to the federal funding that's coming out. I have to say it's very confusing because as the funds are coming out, the agencies that are responsible for implementing them aren't exactly sure yet as to how to implement them or what some of the requirements are going to be. So we continue to participate, and we're like many other agencies just trying to figure out how to set us up so that we can successfully apply for funding. Staff is working on a council districting FAQ utility bill insert per council request. I will note it wasn't until I was reading that it hit me that half of Yuba City will not be voting in a council election this year. The southern half of Yuba City residents will not be voting in the election for a council member. And so it's going to be such a unique time as we shift to districts. And then also the ballots will look different because depending upon where you live and which district you live, you will only be voting on the council member for your district. So we're in a much, much different time than what we've been for past elections. And then just one final comment is the police department had an awards ceremony last Thursday, and it was so great to see peers recognizing peers. And we got to see one of those awards tonight with Officer Kosky getting the Police Officer of the Year. But it was a really, really great event. And so awesome to see the contributions and the recognition for everybody. And then quite monumental today as the first day that unvaccinated employees did not have to wear a mask in the workplace. And so it kind of felt anticlimactic that we didn't have some type of party or something, but it was exciting to actually be able to see everybody's faces today. Yeah. So thank you.
I have a question. Because the election is downscaled, is the cost going to be the same?
It's actually going to be more because we're going to have, it's not just basically one ballot where everybody's voting on their top 3 candidates. It's going to have to be a different ballot for each district.
Well, you have to explain that one to me. It seems like less ballots means less cost, but okay. Thank you.
All right. Any other questions from Ms. Langley? All right. Then we will bring it to council reports. Councilmember Espandola.
Thank you, Mayor. So of the multiple committee assignments with the Regional Water Authority, I participated in the executive committee meeting. And one thing that we're doing right now, as I think I mentioned before, is a review of the employee composition of how the salaries and benefits to clearly state of the employees of RWA. And they're they've completed an RFP. It's being released, and I'm going to assist in the selection of who will review the RFP and make recommendations to the executive committee, then which will go to the board on to see if the staff at RWA are being paid to par for their work. The other thing that we're always topic of mind for all of us is the fiscal year budget for 2023. RWA is on budget, and they've actually had some cost savings this year, which is we're not getting a refund, so don't ask me that. With the city of Yuba City, as all of you on the council are aware, we are going to have a tour on March 11th. Prior to that, we've met on the 22nd with Darren Plumas. I can't pronounce his last name, I'm sorry. Deputy Director of Drinking Water, Diana and Ben and I met with him. Mainly, I was just joining the meeting. The real details of the conversation were among them. And trying to figure out funding for our drinking water through the city. And also then we met on the 28th which was yesterday. We met with a division of financial assistance. We met with Michael Downey, Robert Turney, I think, and Elizabeth Brown. And we had Ben, Catherine Willis, Kevin Bradford. I think between both of all those meetings, it's been very productive. We have now our staff and team connected to State Water Resource employees and high-level staffing to help us hopefully identify some potential funding in various ways. And also it brings some information that they're not always clear on some of these new funds that are being brought in through the federal level, but we're looking at grants and possibly state revolving fund. But we're focusing on our tour that's being finalized. It's looking really promising. We're going to focus on the drinking water, wastewater, disadvantaged communities, agricultural economy with the water resiliency tied into it all. And Diana just mentioned the department awards. Chief, you and your team did a fantastic job on the awards. It was extremely impressive and it was such a family gathering feel to it. And hearing the stories really warmed my heart and even opened my eyes to more of the servant work that our police officers and our police department do. So thank you so much for including us in that celebration. And to see Troy receive the year award is just, he's such a great guy. He's amazing. I've had an opportunity to, go out with him a couple times and never a dull moment. I always feel safe with him, but I learned so much in hearing and watching him. Another thing that we've all embraced as a council, which is another close item to my heart, is that March is Women's History Month, which is today is March. We're celebrating women in the city for our second year, and our council together, we're all celebrating our city teams and the women that work for our city and community members. So thank you so much for Sierra's work on that, because Sierra has put so much time and effort. So Sierra, you've done a fantastic job with that. So thank you so much and appreciate all your help and support. Lastly, this morning, I participated on Aqua's Federal Affairs Committee, and we reviewed the proposed Federal Affairs Committee has they do a priority list for the committee on the for the 117 Congress priorities. So there's a team in DC that works and advocates on the priorities that Aqua identifies. And there's a on the West Coast team as well. So once those priorities are summarized, then I will get those out and share with all of you. And if there's any questions on the topics or information, because I know that each of you have your own independent work that you do in other committees and individually partners with other elected folks. So the more that we can share the resources of how these things are being done together, I think we can have an opportunity for our city to have a larger opportunities for infrastructure funding, which we've done so well, as we can see with the improvements of our roads. We also need to improve our water and wastewater infrastructure systems, our piping. The list goes on and on. But I feel very optimistic and encouraged that with these meetings through the State Water Board, that the ASR that we're looking for that $6 million, may be coming here soon, hopefully. And then with the diffusers, there could be a potential from 35 to 40 million. And we're on track to begin those conversations for those larger bill projects. And so this is work that we've all contributed in one way or another. So thank you so much.
Ready, thank you. Councilmember Harris.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Let's start off with the community events. Went into a few of the ribbon cutting on the Pluma Street interiors for the extension of Evans Furniture. It's a very, you have a chance to go in there. It's a very beautiful store. They've done a really good job stocking it and all displays. So hopefully they do have very much success out there. It's a really nice addition to Pluma Street. I had the opportunity to attend the Chamber of Commerce Gala out at Hard Rock Casino. It was very well attended, as it usually is, and congratulations, of course, to all the community members and businesses who were recognized that evening. The highlight, of course, of community things was the PD Awards, and I can tell you congratulations to everybody on the PD who won awards, of course, including Officer Koski, who was here tonight. But so many other people were recognized peer to peer. And Chief, I know you don't like this kind of thing, but I tell you what, to be the head of that organization and to even just to be the MC, I know it doesn't come naturally to you, but you did it. You stepped up for the benefit of your department. And like Grace said, it was a very, very family friendly and very well attended by people of all ages. And it was very, I don't want to be corny, but like wholesome and just really pleasant to be there. Really pleasant atmosphere, all positive. Everybody was there for each other and legitimately happy for each other. And you're the head of that. And I thank you for that. It was very well done. Thank you. Yuba-Sutter Arts. We had our meeting. The highlight of that, you may or may not have known, was the attack on the COVID policy that staff established over there. To the point where it was in Yuba County, the resolution to designate Yuba-Sutter Arts as their representative to the California Arts Commission was put in jeopardy. Yuba County was forced to vote on whether they're going to designate Yuba-Sutter Arts as that, which of course if they did not, it would put $200,000+ in jeopardy to the point where we may have had to relocate over to Sutter County only. And that was based solely on the attacks of the differing philosophies on the COVID policy that staff put in place. However, I found out today they had a special meeting and there was a majority of council voted to continue a relationship with Yuba-Sutter Arts as their designee to the California Arts Commission. SACOG, the main thing was discussing the policy framework, which I've talked about before, the triple bottom line moving forward, guiding all policies of the three premises of equity, economy, and environment. Those three things. Also, we approved the charge officially as a board of the Race, Equity, Inclusion Group, the official what their mission is, and also we held a workshop. One of the things of COVID is you can have people from across the country participate in your meetings from Zoom. And so we had a gentleman from Washington, D.C., also the head of transportation folks in Sacramento, provide us an overview and a workshop of opportunities for state and federal transportation funding. And as Diana expressed, there's a multitude of different grant opportunities out there by different agencies, all with different acronyms, all with different missions, all with different requirements, all with different amounts that are available through various sources. And it's unprecedented the amount of money that's available out there and the opportunities there. It's like a feeding frenzy. So everybody's trying to figure out and position themselves what projects they're going to have ready to go, who they're going to submit it to, and how and when. But it's really opportunities are ripe for additional funding out there. Of course, I immediately came back and found out, of course, that staff is on top of all that and monitoring it and got their finger on the pulse, and so we don't miss any opportunities, as she stated. And that is it for now. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Boomgarden.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Regional Housing Authority, our meeting with, after our last council meeting was postponed, but we do have one tomorrow. They do have some pretty good projects in the pipeline. I'll be able to report back on those at our next meeting. Did attend the Chamber Gala, and like has been mentioned, congratulations to all those who were awarded. It was really well attended. A special thanks to Marnie Sanders, who tried to maintain control in a very full auditorium where people wanted to talk because they hadn't been out. And so she did a great job, and it's good to have that event back in the queue. LAFCO, we were scheduled to receive a municipal services review on fire. That was postponed. The only thing I would say about this at this particular point in time, I think this council's heard me say it before, the fire services in Sutter County are stretched. And a lot of that has to do with the symbiotic or the sharing of resources that occurs between the agencies in this county. It's no different for law enforcement. I think everybody around here knows, none of the entities are big enough to staff, themselves for that one or two or whatever, how many incidents. So there really is a relationship. And frankly, I'm going to continue to be concerned about the status, especially of our neighbors in Sutter County in regards to their ability to provide assistance to the city of Yuba City. They've got a long-standing history of doing so and doing so professionally. However, it's difficult when you're a volunteer organization, or at least a partially staffed volunteer organization, when volunteerism is under very much a challenge. So this is something that we're going to need to pay attention to, and you're going to hear more from myself, Chief Alexander, as this continues to unfold. The PD Awards, I can't really say any more, except it really was a fantastic event. You know what? Much respect for law enforcement. It was great to be able to recognize the heroes and those doing the hard work day to day out in the field, taking care of the citizens of Yuba City. And they were even awarded for taking care of people outside the city of Yuba City at this award ceremony. So that was good. And it was very well attended. Wrap up with a couple things. One is, several months ago, this council raised the concern about a cyber attack with the city staff. And of course, the world's events right now, I think it's pretty much top of mind right now that that could be in play. I think our staff has done a really good job so far of heightening the awareness and making us, less vulnerable to cyber. I don't think you can ever get away from that, but just for the citizens to know that this was something that the city realized here several months ago and has made, great steps in trying to bolster our protection. Last thing is, saw a bulletin from George Barlow today. We get a Cold Stone Creamery on the night that we're talking about the blue zones. I think that's awesome. So anyway, I like Cold Stone Creamery. Anyway, as always, pleasure to serve the city of Yuba City, and I'm gonna quit talking.
All right. Well, thank you. And that gives a whole new meaning to the blue. It's an ice cream. So, Vice Mayor.
Thank you, Mayor. I'd just like to reiterate what the city manager said today. It was nice being at City Hall and seeing happy faces instead of the mask. So I agree with that. Regional Transit, I was asked to chair the meeting this time around. Director Hudson was unable to attend. We talked about and authorized pursuing several grants during the meeting. Something else that came up during this time was the need to authorize the creation of an ad hoc committee that was the purpose is to provide a policy input for the next 5 to 10 years for the organization. But unfortunately, it turns out that if you are an accountant or a farmer, you were excused from being on said ad hoc. So I'm on another ad hoc committee by process of elimination. So I got that going for me. But other than that, it was a very productive meeting. I look forward to being part of that ad hoc going forward. Sabufka, we had speaking of ad hocs, Sabufka, we had an ad hoc to discuss the concerns we have in South-Sutter County, showing up our vulnerabilities in our defense lines with our levees down there. There's about a 5.2 mile levee that needs to be addressed. They're looking at 5.9 million, but that is strictly for the design, permits, and engineering part of it. So this is what the ad hoc is to figure out where that funding is coming from. They are, Sabufka has a meeting with DWR tomorrow to find out what DWR's contribution portion will be moving forward. So I'm anxious to see what that will look like. We did set a cap at 2 million for a contribution during the ad hoc meeting. The other thing is we are sending a letter of support, hopefully getting support from Senator Nielsen and Assemblyman Gallagher. We're hoping for an additional 10 million to do a phase 2 sediment removal on the Feather River, just below the mouth of the Yuba. If you look towards Marysville from the boat ramp, there's extensive debris along that line, and so we're hoping to get additional 10 million. It's at the point where they may be able to just drive heavy equipment out there to remove it. There's so much out there, so that'll be interesting to follow. The mayor and I took part of the senior commission interviews, and I think we've got some great people on board with that organization. Lastly, in the mayor's place and with Councilmember Harris, I did attend the ribbon cutting on Pluma Street for the Pluma Street interiors, and I do recommend everybody to try that place. It's a great addition to our downtown community. And that's it.
Ready, thank you. I will start off my reports tonight by thanking my colleagues and our city manager, Ms. Langley. As you met, you kind of get out of these extra ad hocs if you have certain professions, of being an EA and an RIA. I'm a little busy right now, so I appreciate the coverage that I'm getting. Ms. Langley covered a meeting for me. I think it was Thursday. I haven't had a day off in over a month, so our days kind of run together, but I think it was Thursday, and then the ribbon cuttings and stuff. So thank you to my colleagues for all the work. And that's the great part about being on a team. We all pitch in and help each other. So things that are top of mind, talked about transit. All the one on there is all about grants and grant funding. We're trying to raise $40 million to build a new state-of-the-art transit facility. 8 of that is coming in with the project that we partnered with for Richland Housing. There was 8 million of that. So, hey, we only got 32 million to go. And I believe at that we authorized, I think it was 4 or 6 different grants, all the resolutions to go. So it's like everything else is apply often and frequently in as many places as we go. So we're looking to try to get the funds for that. RWMA was canceled. We will have meetings coming up there, but we are in the process of hiring the new executive director for the RWMA. We are anticipating and trying to look at scheduling interviews with the final candidates within the next couple of weeks. So there will be information coming forth on the RWMA, and then letting you know what the transition plan will look like, as Mr. Martin and his team will transition out, but we'll have a new executive director coming on. The EDC, Ms. Langley, thank you for attending the executive committee on that. We have our regular meeting coming up Friday morning. So we'll be picking up that and moving forward, and I'll have more to report out of that one. GSEC has meetings upcoming as well. We have a meeting next week in Sacramento, and then we have a retreat coming up as well. GSEC is very vital as SACOG, keeping us in the regional forefront. The big news from GSEC right now, as you've seen it in the news, was Aggie Square. They were instrumental in that, along with a lot of other things in bringing that to Sacramento. Got their ear, trying to bring them this way as much as possible, and let them know that we need development up here as well with some of these projects that bring good paying jobs to our community. So that we definitely have. We have the Intergovernmental Relations Committee, or the IRC. So we've got that coming up before the next meeting. Things that we're going to be talking about, Councilmember Boomgarden, absolutely. The concerns we have with fire safety in our region, that's going to be one of the things that's going to be top of mind, because whatever happens at the county impacts us at the city. And so I look forward to having further conversations with you and Chief Alexander before the IRC so that we can make sure we get those addressed. Other issues is also going to concern the homeless workshop that we have on the 29th coming up. The way, again, that we've envisioned structuring this is the series of 3 meetings. The first meeting is us as a city to figure out, get to the real story of how we're dealing with it. I encourage the county to do their own and figure out how they're handling things at their level. Second meeting would bring us together, and I see it being mutually beneficial if we've had those meetings and we can come together and have a clear understanding of where we are as individual municipalities. And then the last meeting, we'll start bringing in all the partners. So the whole idea with that is to try to come up with some ideas that are longstanding, not flashes in the pan, not, ooh, we're going to do this today and it's going to work and forget about it. Something that can turn the situation around long-term here. So that's hopefully what we're going to be able to come out of that. And as Councilmember Harris says, no more counts. We know there's a lot of them. We need real solutions and options. So that's hopefully what we're going to come out with these. The gala was a huge success. Thank you to Marnie and the chamber for putting that on. Chief Baker, thank you for being gracious. You called me and about the awards. I wished I could have been there, but you were gracious enough. I offered to clear my calendar and go because I highly respect you and your team. Pardon the French, you guys do a hell of a job in an environment that's not always inviting for you guys. And you guys have my utmost respect, and I really appreciate it. Thank you for doing that. Thank you for being gracious enough to allow me to just be here tonight. And then with those, I will have more to report out at the next meeting. I want to close tonight in a couple of things. The first one is, as everyone knows, and Councilman Boomgard talked about, cyber attacks and being on the alert and stuff like this. World's a mess right now, and you don't even have to go all the way across the Ukraine to find out just how much of a mess the world is. We've been through hell the last 2 years. There's a lot of confusion. There's a lot of unknowns. I just have a simple request tonight, and that is, without respect of what your beliefs are or not, I just ask the people of Yuba City, take a few minutes and extend your thoughts and prayers to whoever that may be. Not just for the Ukrainians, but our world as a whole. We need to come together in unity. We need to come together in peace. And hopefully cool heads will prevail and we'll all get through everything that's before us. The last thing, this might be a little tough. We've been through a lot the last 2 years. Last week, 2 people I personally know left suddenly and unexpected from this world. The one that I want to discuss tonight is someone that's been a pillar of this community. You probably go back to the days 20 years ago, you could find him at Carl's Jr. in Marysville, smiling face, running that shop. And then his wife and he had a dream, and they took over Trumbull's there on Pluma Street and turned it into Linda's. Last Monday, we lost Tim McKenna. Tim and Linda have been pillars of this community and a lot for this community. And with that, I would just like to close in honor of Tim McKenna tonight, because a lot of people knew him, loved him. And we send out our thoughts and our prayers and best wishes to Linda and the entire family. So with that, we will close in honor of Mr. Tim McKenna tonight.
Yuba-Sutter.live's local government live streams are presented by Plumas Lake Self-Storage in Plumas Lake, where lifelong local residents are helping other residents keep things safe, providing indoor storage units, outdoor RV and vehicle parking, moving supplies, and Penske truck rentals. Details at plumaslakeselfstorage.com.